You wake up on a Saturday morning with no plans, no brunch invitations, no group chats buzzing with coordination, no expectations pulling you out the door, just silence, just space, just the slow unfolding of hours that belong entirely to you. And instead of feeling empty, you feel something closer to relief. Most people would call this loneliness. You know it's something else. It's not that you hate people. It's that you've learned, over years of trial and error, that your life works better when it's built differently. Quieter, slower, more intentional. This isn't laziness. This isn't fear. This isn't you giving up on connection or meaning. This is architecture. You are designing a life that doesn't drain you. A life that protects your energy instead of demanding it. A life where solitude isn't the thing you retreat to when you're broken. It's the foundation everything else is built on. And that requires a kind of clarity most people never develop. There's a psychology to this, a structure beneath the surface. Henry David Thoreau spent 2 years living alone in a cabin by Walden Pond, not because he hated society, but because he wanted to live deliberately. He wanted to strip life down to its essentials and see what remained when all the noise was removed. He wrote, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." That's what you're doing, whether you realize it or not. You're not running away. You're building towards something. A life that fits the shape of your soul, instead of forcing your soul to fit the shape of someone else's expectations. Some people can live in constant motion. They thrive in noise, crowds, spontaneity, and overstimulation. Their energy regenerates through interaction. Their sense of self strengthens in the presence of others. For them, a full social calendar feels like oxygen. An empty weekend feels like suffocation. But for you, it's the opposite. Every conversation costs something. Every social obligation extracts a piece of you that takes hours, sometimes days, to recover. You've tried to keep up. You've tried to be the person who says yes to everything, who shows up with a smile, who performs enthusiasm even when your nervous system is screaming for rest, and it nearly broke you. So you stopped, not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually you started making different choices. You stopped saying yes to things that felt like obligations instead of invitations. You stopped filling your calendar just to avoid the fear of being alone. You stopped pretending that your ideal Friday night involved anything other than your couch, a book, and the kind of silence that feels like coming home to yourself. And something unexpected happened. Your life didn't fall apart. It started making sense. The relief was immediate. The guilt came later. Because even though your body felt lighter, your mind started asking questions. Am I broken? Am I giving up? Am I choosing comfort over growth? Those questions echo the voices of everyone who ever told you that a good life requires constant connection, that solitude is something to overcome, that choosing to be alone means choosing to be less. But here's what those voices don't understand. You're not choosing less. You're choosing differently. You're choosing a life where your energy isn't constantly being extracted by people and situations that don't nourish you in return. You're choosing emotional honesty over social performance. I used to think there was something wrong with me. I'd watch friends move through the world with ease, jumping from one social event to another, texting constantly, making plans weeks in advance. And I'd wonder why I couldn't do the same without feeling like I was slowly disappearing. I tried to fix it. I read articles about overcoming introversion. I forced myself to accept invitations I didn't want. I smiled through dinners that left me feeling emptier than when I arrived. And then one day, I stopped trying to fix it. I stopped treating my need for solitude like a flaw and started treating it like information. My nervous system was telling me something. My energy was telling me something. My soul was telling me something. And instead of arguing with it, I started listening. I began structuring my life differently. I stopped scheduling back-to-back social events. I built in recovery time after anything that required emotional performance. I said no more often, and I stopped apologizing for it. I created a life with more silence, more space, more room to breathe. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was constantly running on empty. That's when I realized, this isn't about fixing yourself. It's about designing a life that works for the person you actually are. It's about recognizing that the blueprint you inherited, the one that says a good life is a full life, a busy life, a socially rich life, wasn't designed with you in mind. And instead of breaking yourself trying to fit it, you're allowed to draw a new one. Thoreau believed that most people live lives of quiet desperation because they never stop long enough to ask what they actually want. They inherit a blueprint, go to school, get a job, build a social life, fill every weekend, stay busy, stay connected, stay relevant, and they follow it without questioning whether it fits. But you've questioned it. You've looked at that blueprint and realized it was designed for someone else. Someone with different energy, different needs, different wiring. And instead of forcing yourself into a life that exhausts you, you're building one that sustains you. That's not failure. That's wisdom. It's the kind of wisdom that only comes from years of pushing yourself past your limits and finally realizing that those limits aren't weaknesses. They're boundaries that deserve to be honored. Thoreau didn't go to Walden to escape life. He went to discover what life could be when it wasn't cluttered with obligations, expectations, and the constant noise of other people's needs. He wanted to see what remained when everything unnecessary was stripped away. And what he found was clarity, simplicity, a sense of aliveness that had been buried under years of social performance. That's what you're looking for too. Not isolation, not disconnection, but a life where you can finally hear yourself think. A life where your days aren't dictated by other people's rhythms. A life where solitude feels like nourishment instead of punishment. The emotional architecture of a quieter life isn't about isolation. It's about intentionality. It's about understanding that your energy is finite and that how you spend it matters. It's about recognizing that some relationships drain you while others nourish you, and that you're allowed to choose accordingly. It's about creating a daily rhythm that doesn't feel like a constant battle against your own nature. For some people, that means living alone or with one carefully chosen person instead of in a crowded household, working from home or in a quiet environment instead of in an open-plan office that feels like sensory warfare, having one or two deep friendships instead of a wide social circle that requires constant maintenance, spending evenings in silence, reading, writing, thinking, instead of filling every hour with noise and distraction. These aren't signs of avoidance, they're design choices. You're not hiding from life. You're building a version of it that doesn't cost you your sanity. And that requires self-knowledge most people never develop. You have to know what drains you and what restores you. You have to know the difference between loneliness that signals a need for connection and loneliness that's just the echo of old conditioning telling you that being alone is wrong. You have to know when to push yourself toward people and when to honor your need for space. That discernment comes from paying attention, from noticing how you feel after different types of interactions, from tracking your energy over days and weeks, from being honest with yourself about what actually nourishes you versus what you think should nourish you. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about the value of time and the importance of guarding it fiercely. He believed that most people waste their lives not because they don't have enough time, but because they give it away too freely, to obligations they don't care about, to people who don't truly see them, to activities that leave them feeling emptier than before. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested." That's what you're doing when you structure your life around solitude and selectivity. You're investing your time and energy in things that actually matter to you, instead of scattering it across 1,000 shallow demands. You're not being selfish, you're being sovereign. You're treating your life like it belongs to you, not to everyone who wants a piece of it. Seneca also warned against what he called the busyness trap, the tendency to fill every moment with activity, not because it's meaningful, but because stillness feels uncomfortable. He saw busyness as a form of avoidance, a way to escape the harder questions. What do I actually want? What kind of life am I building? Am I living deliberately, or am I just reacting? When you choose a quieter life, you're stepping out of that trap. You're choosing to sit with those questions instead of running from them. You're choosing to build a life based on your answers, not on the cultural script that says more is always better. But here's the part that almost no one talks about. Building a quieter life requires you to tolerate other people's discomfort. When you start saying no more often, people notice. When you stop showing up to every event, people ask questions. When you choose solitude over socializing, people project their own fears onto you. They'll say you're isolating yourself. They'll worry you're depressed. They'll tell you that you need to get out more or put yourself out there. And some of that might come from genuine care, but a lot of it comes from their own inability to understand that your needs are different from theirs. For people who recharge through social interaction, solitude feels like deprivation. They can't imagine choosing to be alone unless something is wrong. So when they see you making that choice, they interpret it through their own lens. You must be lonely. You must be struggling. You must need saving. But you don't need saving. You need space. You need the freedom to structure your life in a way that doesn't constantly deplete you. You need people to trust that you know yourself better than they know you. And that means you'll have to hold your ground. You'll have to get comfortable with the fact that some people will never understand your choices. You'll have to stop explaining yourself to people who aren't capable of hearing you. Because the alternative, living a life designed for someone else's comfort, is far more painful than their temporary confusion. The quieter life you're building isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about creating a daily existence where your external reality matches your internal needs, where your calendar reflects your values instead of other people's expectations, where your home feels like a sanctuary instead of a staging ground for a life you're too tired to live. This might mean structuring your work so you have long stretches of uninterrupted time, choosing friendships that allow for silence, depth, and long gaps between contact without guilt. Designing your living space to be a place of rest, not performance. Protecting your mornings, your evenings, or your weekends as sacred time that belongs only to you. These aren't luxuries, they're necessities. For someone wired like you, a life without these protections isn't sustainable. It's a slow erosion of self. And here's what most people don't realize. Protecting your energy isn't the same as hoarding it. It's not about refusing to give. It's about being selective about where you give. It's about recognizing that you have a limited reservoir, and that if you pour it out indiscriminately, you'll have nothing left for the things and the people that truly matter. When you protect your energy, you're actually more capable of showing up fully for the connections that nourish you. You're more present, more generous, more alive, because you're not operating from a place of depletion. You're operating from a place of fullness. Thoreau also wrote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation." You're not resigned, you're awake. You've seen the cost of living a life that doesn't fit, and you've chosen differently. You've recognized that the world will always demand more of you than you can give, and that the only way to survive is to set boundaries around what you're willing to offer. That's not weakness. That's self-preservation. That's emotional intelligence. That's the quiet rebellion of someone who refuses to spend their one life performing for an audience that will never truly see them. There's a difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation is what happens when you're alone, and it feels like punishment. When the silence amplifies your loneliness instead of soothing it. Solitude is what happens when you're alone, and it feels like coming home. When the silence gives you space to think, feel, and exist without the constant pressure to perform. The quieter life you're building is rooted in solitude, not isolation. It's not about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about engaging with the world on your own terms. It's about choosing connection when it nourishes you, and choosing withdrawal when you need to refill. And that requires self-awareness most people never develop. You have to know the difference between loneliness and solitude. You have to know when you're avoiding connection out of fear versus when you're protecting your energy out of wisdom. You have to know when to push yourself toward people and when to honor your need for space. That discernment comes with practice. It comes from paying attention to how you feel in different situations. It comes from noticing the difference between the loneliness that aches for connection and the loneliness that's just your nervous system recovering from overstimulation. It comes from being honest with yourself about what you actually need versus what you think you should need. Here's what building a quieter life might look like in practice. You wake up without an alarm, or at least without the immediate pressure of obligations. You move slowly through your morning. Coffee, silence, maybe a walk, maybe journaling. You work in focus blocks with long stretches of uninterrupted time instead of constant meetings and interruptions. You protect your evenings. You don't fill them with social obligations unless you genuinely want to. You say no to invitations that feel like obligations. You say yes only when it feels like a genuine pull. You have one or two people you can call when you need connection, people who understand that you might disappear for weeks and reappear without explanation. You create rituals that ground you, reading before bed, cooking a quiet dinner, sitting in your favorite chair and doing absolutely nothing. This isn't a life of deprivation, it's a life of curation. You're not missing out, you're choosing in. And the beauty of this kind of life is that it creates space for depth. When you're not constantly scattering your energy across 100 shallow interactions, you can actually go deep with the few things that matter. You can read a book slowly, savoring each page. You can have a conversation that lasts 3 hours because neither of you is rushing to the next thing. You can sit with a thought, a feeling, a question, and let it unfold in its own time. That kind of depth is rare, and it's only possible when you have the space to let it happen. One of the biggest fears people have about building a quieter life is that they'll end up alone forever. That if they stop forcing themselves to socialize, they'll wake up one day and realize they have no one. But that's not how it works. When you stop spending your energy on shallow connections that drain you, you create space for deeper ones. When you stop performing a version of yourself that isn't real, you attract people who actually see you. When you stop filling your life with noise, you start hearing the signal. The people who belong in your life. The ones who understand your rhythms, who don't demand constant contact, who value depth over frequency. Those people will find you. And the ones who don't, they were never meant to stay. This doesn't mean you'll have a large circle. You probably won't. But you'll have a real one. You'll have people who know you, not just the version of you that shows up to parties. You'll have relationships built on mutual understanding, not mutual obligation. You'll have connections that nourish you instead of depleting you. And that's worth more than 100 surface-level friendships. Building a quieter life doesn't mean you'll never feel lonely. Loneliness will still visit. Doubt will still creep in. There will be moments when you wonder if you're doing this wrong, if you're missing something everyone else seems to have figured out. But those moments don't mean you failed. They mean you're human. The difference is that now you have a structure that supports you. You have a life designed to hold you, instead of one that constantly asks you to hold it together. You have rituals, boundaries, and rhythms that protect your energy instead of depleting it. And when loneliness does show up, you'll have the clarity to ask, is this loneliness telling me I need more connection? Or is it just the echo of old conditioning that says I should want something I don't actually need? That discernment is everything, because not all loneliness is the same. Sometimes loneliness is your soul telling you it's time to reach out, to connect, to let someone in. And sometimes loneliness is just the discomfort of going against cultural norms. The feeling that arises when you choose a path that looks different from everyone else's. Learning to tell the difference is one of the most important skills you can develop. Thoreau left Walden Pond after 2 years. He didn't stay in the woods forever. He returned to society. But he returned different. He returned with clarity about what mattered. with boundaries around his time and energy, with a life structured around his values instead of other people's expectations. That's what the quieter life gives you. Not permanent isolation, not a rejection of the world, but a foundation strong enough that you can engage with the world without losing yourself in it. You can show up for people when it matters. You can participate in social situations when you choose to. You can be present, generous, and open because you're not operating from a place of depletion. But you can also leave when you need to. You can say no without guilt. You can protect your time, your energy, your inner world. And that balance, that ability to move between solitude and connection without losing yourself in either, is what makes a quieter life sustainable. You're not broken for needing this. You're not weak for choosing solitude over constant stimulation. You're not failing at life because your calendar is emptier than other people's. You're building something most people never have the courage to build. A life that actually fits. A life where your energy isn't constantly being extracted. A life where your home is a sanctuary, not a waiting room. A life where silence feels like peace instead of punishment. That's not small. That's profound. That's the emotional architecture of a life worth living. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small choices, repeated over time. It happens when you say no to one more obligation you don't want. It happens when you protect your Saturday morning instead of filling it with plans. It happens when you choose one deep conversation over 10 shallow ones. It happens when you stop apologizing for needing what you need. Brick by brick, choice by choice, you're building something that will hold you. Something that honors who you are instead of demanding that you be someone else. So if you're someone who spent years feeling guilty for wanting less noise, fewer people, more space, this is your permission. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to design a life that honors who you are. And that life, it's quieter, it's slower, it's more intentional, but it's also deeper, more honest, more yours. You're not missing out. You're building in. You're creating a life where you can finally breathe, where you can finally think, where you can finally be yourself without performing, without apologizing, without constantly running on empty. That's not a small thing. That's everything.